January 2019, and that was his suicide attempt. Pretty much that the audience for Nancy Grace rose more than 150% during the trial and the proceedings. Pretty much putting her in everyone's home and annoying the fuck out of me. Sean Hannity of Evil News Channel felt the verdict was fair because the prosecution did not have enough evidence to establish guilt or meet the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
I didn't think I'd be agreeing with Sean.
Yeah. I mean, Sean Hannity gets my ass and burned in the fiery pits of hell, but yeah, I agree with him with this. Well, just this. Everything else, and both me and him was outside, and he said the sky was cloudy, and it was cloudy. I would say, no, it's not. Fuck you, Sean. And then fart on his head. There was a gender gap in perception of the case. According to a USA Gallup poll of 1,010 respondents, about 2/3 of Americans, 64%, believe Casey Anthony definitely or probably murdered her daughter. However, women were much more likely than men to believe the murder charges against Anthony and to be upset by the not guilty verdict. The poll reported that women were more than twice as likely as men, 28% versus 11%, to think Anthony definitely committed the murder. 27% of the women said they were angry about the verdict, compared to 9% of men. On the day Casey Anthony was sentenced for lying to investigators in the death of her daughter, supporters and protesters gathered outside the Orange County courthouse, with one man displaying a sign asking Anthony to marry him. Two men who drove overnight from West Virginia held signs that "We love and support you, Casey Anthony," and Nancy Grace try to ruin innocent lives. The jury had spoken. P.S. Our legal system still works. The gender gap had been maintained by maternal instincts. The idea of a mother murdering her own child is a threat to the idea of motherhood. For example, the trial was compared to the 1960 trial of Alice Trimmings, who was accused of murdering her two small children.
Oh, is that the one where she blamed? Didn't she blame like a black guy?
No. That was Susan. I forgot her last name.
Keating?
Susan something, not Keating. Susan something.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's a different case. He's doing the 1960s.
Okay.
Even O.J. Simpson case prosecutor Marshall Clark believed the jury interpreted reasonable doubt too narrowly. Clark said instructions on reasonable doubt is the hardest, most inclusive inclusion of all. And I think it's where even the most fair-minded jurors get derailed. She said, opting the confusion between reasonable doubt and a reason to doubt. In Scotland, they have 3 verdicts: guilty, not guilty, and not proven. It's one way of showing that even if the jury didn't believe the evidence about it to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, it didn't find the defendant innocent either. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So, what happened to Casey Anthony and what's happening now? Well, there's been a buyer of civil suits. On September 2008, Zendaya Fernandez-Gonzalez sued Casey Anthony for defamation. Like I said, she made these names up, but there was someone actually named Zendaya Fernandez-Gonzalez who lived in Orlando. Never met Casey.
Her name was besmirched.
She was besmirched. So she decided to sue. The Texas EquiSearch, a nonprofit group that assisted in the search of Caylee from July to December 2008 because they believed she was missing, sued Anthony for fraud and enrichment. Anthony settled that out of court in 2013, and TSS is listed as creditor to Anthony and is titled $75,000. The law has changed in Florida, Oklahoma, New York, and West Virginia. It's called Caylee's Law. It says if a child is missing, it must be reported by a child's parent or legal guardian within 24 hours. Otherwise, it would become a felony. So what's Casey Anthony doing now? She's working for the private investigator that bailed her out.
No shit.
Up in Florida. She's still up in Florida. She's been working. She did an interview like last year stating that she's learned a lot from doing private investigation, helping the private investigators. there's a lot of work that she sees need to be done in the criminal justice system. Interesting story. One of the private investigators came over to Bias's office looking for Caylee. Got over to Bias's office, and right before he walks into his office, he sees Caylee running out of the office, butt-ass naked, with a smile on her face.
What the hell?
And Bias is struggling to pull up his pants. Because apparently, after the trial was over and Caylee was acquitted, Bias had said to Caylee, "You owe me one." So he was collecting on his debt.
I guess so. Handed out IOUs all
Yep,
over.
I owe you. Like, I owe you
Jesus.
one fuck date. I'm about to get it.
I'm reading about the this later information part of this article.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, like this goes into my theory of what happened. So the later information that Ogul is looking at is in November 2012, WKMG TV in Orlando reported that police never investigated the Firefox browser evidence on Casey's computer the day of Caylee's death. They only looked at the Internet Explorer evidence because Caylee did not use Internet Explorer. She used Firefox, and Firefox at that time was in beta testing. So the program that the Canadian investigator had came up with was just for Internet Explorer. It was not for Firefox. And later Google, what's the Google? The Google
Chrome.
Google Chrome, and what's the other one other than Firefox?
There's Firefox, Internet Explorer, Chrome, and then there's like Mozilla.
Mozilla, yeah. So Firefox was in beta testing, but she was using Firefox. The browser history showed that someone at the Anthony household using a password-protected account Caylee used did a Firefox Google search for foolproof suffocation at 2:51 p.m. and they clicked on the article criticizing pro-suicide websites promoting foolproof ways to die, including the idea of committing suicide by taking poison and putting a plastic bag over someone's head. The browser recorded activity on MySpace, a site used by Caylee but not by George. The station learned about this information from Caylee's lawyer, Jose Bias, who mentioned it in his book on the case, speculating that George had contemplated suicide after Caylee's death. He conceded to the reporters that the records were open to interpretation. However, he speculated the state may have chosen not to introduce the search at the trial because, according to Bias, the computer records tend to refute the timeline stated by George, which was that Caylee left at 12:50. Analysis by John Getz, a retired engineer and computer expert in Connecticut, revealed that her password-protected computer account shows activity on the home computer at 1:39 p.m. and her activity on her AIM account as well as MySpace and Facebook. On April 2016, transcripts from 2005 affidavit of private investigator Dominic Caylee were found in court documents in the matter of Croc versus Anthony and picked up by news services in May 2016. One affidavit, Caylee stated on July 26, 2008, Bias admitted to him that Casey Anthony murdered Caylee Anthony and dumped the body somewhere, and he needed all the help he could get to find the body before anyone else did. He also claimed that Bias had a sexual relationship with Anthony, and Caylee told me that she had to do what Bias says because she had nobody for defense. Bias vehemently denied the sexual relationship.
Interesting.
Yeah, because what was I about to say? That Bias thought that the prosecution had the Firefox
Got it.
receipt, but they never introduced it. So because he had no way to refute that, and he'd be like, "I'm fucked," but they never introduced it because they never bothered to check. Because the police never bothered to check it.
Why didn't they introduce it though?
Because they knew nothing about Firefox. This is before. This is not now, where the police are a little bit more and prosecutors are a little bit more computer savvy. This was still people were getting used to the internet, and everyone goes to Internet Explorer. Firefox, again, was in beta testing. So not everyone had Firefox Internet Explorer. But Caylee did.
Interesting.
And there was no technology that was developed at that time to be able to go back and check what someone has done on Firefox. So
they fucked up.
Yeah, they fucked up. Yeah, they fucked up. So here's what I think had happened, and I'll let you think. I think Casey Anthony one day, after being on MySpace and Facebook and seeing all the fun her friends had, we're having, going to college, going to parties, she's boggled down with a daughter. She wants to go out. She wants to have a good time for long periods of time. She wants to stay out. She's also mad at the fact that her mother is pretty much being the mother of her daughter. So she's like, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this real good. So she's been doing what she's always been doing. Taking the kid to Zanny the nanny.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Zanny, because of her relationship with her boyfriend or previous boyfriends at the time, because her boyfriend was a DJ. So Zanny is not just someone's name. It's also a nickname for a street drug.
Xanax?
Exactly.
Interesting.
She's been giving Caylee Xanax to put her to sleep for long periods of time. One thing I did not bring up is that her family and her friends would sometimes look at Caylee when she was alive, and she would be asleep for long periods of time and have when she wakes up, dark lines over her eyes. Because she's been asleep for so long. Because she's been taking Xanax. Casey's been giving her daughter Xanax.
Interesting.
So either one or two things happened. Either she deliberately gave her daughter too much Xanax, or she accidentally gave her daughter too much Xanax, and she stopped breathing. Overdose. She panics. She doesn't know what the fuck to do. Whether she's in a stupor or just like, I'm tired, whatever. Here's some Xanax so I can get some peace and quiet. Stops breathing. She's like, she doesn't know what to do. Puts the kid, wraps her in a blanket, puts her in a bag, puts her in the backseat of the car, drives over to her boyfriend's house, goes fucking do some drugs, have intercourse, whatever. She knows that the body's going to start stinking. So the body's starting to decompose. So she ends up getting rid of the body. She moves it to one place. And then she moves it to another place. And then to cover up that the body was decomposing in the backseat of the car, she takes a big bag of garbage. She goes to the Amway parking lot, parks by that dumpster, goes looking through it, finds a big bag of garbage, puts it in the back seat, or the trunk of the car, closes the car up. In the Florida heat, it's going to start smelling, so that will take care of the decomposing body. Case closed. Whether it was an accident or she deliberately did it, it's anyone's guess.
That'll never be determined.
It'll never be determined.
But that's very interesting, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting, actually. Yeah, I mean, yeah. That to me makes so much sense because I don't believe this to be a murder.
Mm-hmm.
I believe this to either be an accident an accident. Whether it was because of very, very, very neglectful behavior by a parent, or it was a true accident and the kid drowned in the pool.
Right.
Regardless of either way, after it happened and the kid passed away, it wasn't dealt with the way it should have been.
Right.
Whether George, the father, had anything to do with covering it up, or whether he didn't.
Right.
It's a moot point after the fact, but yeah, I don't. There just simply isn't enough evidence to say that